Hello, welcome to the Social Capital Guy podcast. My name is Bhavan Joseph, aka the Social Capital Guy, and I will be your host. After working on Wall Street for 15 plus years and running a successful nonprofit for the last 7, I decided to pivot to share my knowledge and network to help others find ways to increase their social capital. I believe that relationships are at the core of life, especially in business, and your network is your net worth. This podcast focuses on what I call the 3 C's: careers, community, and capital. And when I talk about capital, I mean both social and financial capital. So let's get into it. TikTok. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Social Capital Guy podcast. I'm your host, Bhavan Joseph. My goal with every episode is to leave the listeners with a few call to action questions, such as what's next or what can I do now that I have this knowledge. I also hope to provide inspirational and motivational content that you can find applicable and useful in your own daily life. This podcast is centered around what I call the 3 C's: community, careers, and capital. And in this episode, we'll explore the careers component. My hope is that today's guest will serve as an inspiration to those trying to break into a particular industry, such as finance in his case, but who come from a non traditional background. When I was thinking about who I should have as my first guest on this podcast, one name kept coming back to me over and over. And my first conversation with this young man happened around 2019, 2020. And I'll never forget what he said to me in that interview. When I asked him why he wanted to join the financial internship program I was running at the time, he immediately replied that he wanted a career in finance and he was willing to do whatever it took to put the work in to achieve that goal. So my first impression of this young man was that he was serious, disciplined, motivated, and most importantly, open to learning something new. I told him that I'll be pushing him outside of his comfort zone, and he was okay with that. And again, he's been a amazing story ever since. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Manuel Gonzalez, affectionately known to me as Manny and many others. And instead of kind of reading through his bio like every other podcast host typically does, I want to give him and every guest on this podcast an opportunity to tell us their story. I feel like everyone has a story to tell, and there's nobody better person than you to tell your own story. So, Manny, welcome, and please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thank you, Vivan. So, hello, everyone. So, my name's Manuel Gonzalez, but I prefer to go by Manny. So, I'm a junior at DePaul University. I majored in finance, and I'm also a scholar in a very rigorous internship program. Offer me opportunities to explore different career paths, network, learn evaluations, whether it's financial modeling, analyzing financial statements, doing a stock presentation, and even earning certifications. In addition to that, over the years, I worked for H&R Block as a tax preparer and for an appraisal company as an accounting intern. And my last internship last year was at Piper Sandler as a public finance investment banking summer analyst. Additionally, I also worked in the transportation industry, and I worked as a truck driver as an instructor in order to pay my way through school. So this year I'll be interning at a firm, and it provides advisory and capital services to middle market companies. And after our training, basically I'll be able to do work that has to do with researching companies, analyzing financial statements, projecting their ability to repay their loans. And in my role, I'll be able to analyze both this quantitative data and this qualitative aspects of the data. So yeah.
Good, good. So, again, Manny knows that he should always have his elevator pitch ready to go. So, for students listening to this episode, that's a key component of just being a professional and getting ready for the workforce is always having like an elevator pitch ready to go. So,
Yeah.
Manny, tell us a little bit more about your background. Are you from Chicago? Tell us about your
Yeah.
family, that kind of thing. I'm just dig into that a little bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised on the southwest side of Chicago. I moved around a little bit, but I was basically in the southwest side of Chicago. I was raised by a single mother of 5 children who in the 90s, during the 90s, she worked at McDonald's as a cashier and as an employee at a car wash. So she was washing cars even during the winter as a way sort of to provide for my siblings and I. Eventually, she started a business at the flea market selling women's undergarments where I would help out. And basically, we were the Latino Victoria's Secret. So that was my actual first exposure to an actual business. Later, she would start a food truck business where I would also help out. and I got to really see this business take off. But while I enjoyed partaking in this business, I was not well in school. I didn't do well in school. I had very conflicting relationships with my teachers. I didn't really feel that I was compatible with the school institutions. And this sort of led me to be extremely disengaged with school, and I began to fall behind. And even as even though when I was motivated to do well, I didn't feel supported from a lot of my teachers, and then a lot of the times I was ridiculed for trying to put my efforts. So that's basically when I decided to leave high school after my freshman year, and I decided to enroll into a military school, and it's called Lincoln's Challenge Academy. So basically, Lincoln's Challenge Academy, it's a program. It was a very strict program, and it taught you about life coping skills. And at the same time, you were able to sort of earn your GD classes. But because of my lack of engagement in my previous school experience, I was able to finish the program, but I didn't pass my GD. And the only subject I was able to pass was the math test. So I was really embarrassed by that. So I leave military school, and then I begin working. I decided to retake my GD. I decided to study myself. I decided to purchase the book, but I delay taking and opening up the book for months because, in my own mind, really breaking down the material I had to learn, it would mean that it's a discovery to what I do know and what I don't know. And if I confirm that I don't know much, to me that meant that I'm stupid, and I didn't want to find out that I was stupid. So I refused to open the book for months, and all of this was due to my insecurities but about myself. But eventually, one day, I decided that I don't want to live my life like this. And I decided to step out of my house. I look into the sun, I look into the sky, and I begin sort of praying to the sky. And I asked sort of at the sky to take away all my insecurities off my back. And I felt it was because it was those insecurities were the things that were holding me back from moving forward. And so all of a sudden, I feel this weight off my shoulders. Just felt this complete weight off my shoulder. And from that point, that was my epiphany point. That was the turning point in my life. That's when I began to open up the GD and I began to study. And I tell myself, I'm going to keep studying. I'm not going to stop until I pass my GD. So I take the exam. I fail. I retake it again. I fail again. But every time I'm taking it, I'm aware that I'm learning something new and that I'm getting closer and closer ahead to this goal of me passing my GD. So basically, it was sort of like taking this idea that I often hear Denzel Washington say, which is fail your way forward. And that's what I was doing. So I finally retake it the third time and I pass. And, things begin to sort of look out better for me. I become a truck driver. I decide to go to community college, but it's still this lack of engagement in my younger years when I was elementary school and in high school. It sort of catches up to me, and I begin to have some challenges throughout my college experience. I'm taking remedial courses. I didn't know what the syllabus was. I was taking the wrong courses because I didn't know that some courses were transferable and others were not. And I never really spoke to a counselor in regards to those things. In addition to that, I would also have to work full time for myself and help my family, which became extremely challenging. And all of a sudden, I have all these odds against me. They're working against me. I'm working at a job. It's not coinciding with my school schedule. And all of a sudden, this ends up resulting in me being in community college for 10 years. But I have a lot of perseverance and I choose. I mean, it was just deeply ingrained in me that you're not supposed to give up. I already set this in my as my mindset, so I don't give up. So I continue on, and that's when I end up meeting you through a contact, Alex Martinez. I reach out to him on LinkedIn, and that's when I meet you, Vivon, and that's where things begin to take off in my career.
But Manny, I think I've known you for a couple of years now, and the thing that you just described, your story is one of just never giving up, right? And you've heard me say
Yeah,
over and over the same thing that you mentioned, like fail forward. And I tell students all the time, like, I don't even use the word fail, I say fall, because
yeah,
you fall many times, but how many times are you going to get up? So what you did from early on in high school all the way through college up until now was you just never gave up. And I think that's super commendable, remarkable, really.
yeah,
Again, many of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you first on this podcast is because I feel like sometimes, this has happened to me before too. There's a lot of things that we don't talk about because we might be ashamed of them, or we might look at it as being, embarrassing or whatever. But the thing is, when we speak up about these things, like there are a lot of students and other people who might hear this that say, "Wow, I'm not the only one, right? I'm not the only one going through this." And now all of a sudden, you, man, you become like
yeah,
a role model to a ton of students who
yeah,
can say, "Hey, he did it, and he can help me, and if he did it, I can do it." So kudos to you, man. I think again that's the thing that I heard in that first conversation we had is, listen, and again, this podcast is all about social capital. So how did you meet me? You met me through a previous Greenwood scholar, Alex,
Exactly.
who said, "Hey, check this out. I did it. It changed my life."
Right.
But I think when you talk about social capital, definitely interested in to hear from you. So you and I meet like in early 2020. It was COVID, so everything was virtual. So tell me about your experience when it comes to social capital and meeting people in a virtual world, and then
Right.
fast forward to last summer where you were in person.
Yeah.
What was the impact of networking virtually and then in person?
So, for one, the way people perceive you online can sometimes be completely different the way they perceive you in person. So that changes a lot of things. Sometimes even through camera, you're not able to see sort of the intensity. So this is the way I would do it. So back then, when it was during COVID time, is I would mostly do my reaching out through LinkedIn. I would reach out to LinkedIn just like I did for Alex Martinez, who eventually introduced me to you, Vivano. He's the one who passed on my resume. That was my actual first experience, and it opened the whole world to me, right? But now that I'm meeting sort of I'm meeting people in person. What's that really? It's allowing me to do as a person because I am very in person. That's how I like engaging. That allows me sort of to really showcase how impactful and how motivated I am. So those are the two differences in social capital from comparing it to online and then comparing it to and when you're able to do it in person, I mean, you're able to go to events, you're able to go to conventions. I know with you, Vivon, I've been to a few conventions. You've invited me. You're able to have dialogue with people get to see the way you dress, the way you speak. You get to have a more familiarity with the person, and it leads a more, my opinion, a lasting impact. When people do this online through social media, maybe through a Zoom meeting, it's not always as impactful. Many people are sometimes are disengaged. A few people might have their cameras on. I always try to keep my camera on and get engaged with people. But now when you're able to go out and meet people, feel them, shake their hand, I mean, that leaves a lasting impact. And then be able to verbalize your story, that leaves a lasting impact on the person. You're more engaged, you connect a lot more. And there's so much commonality that you find with the other person that you're able to persist and continue on this relationship with them that it might end up sort of resulting in like having an extremely impact on your career.
Definitely, and yeah, you
Yeah.
have like accompanied me to several conferences. We went to DC, a couple of years ago. We did one in Chicago as well. And again, I have met so many students, and when I think about the ones who really put into practice some of the things that I've talked about, being as a mentor to you guys, definitely on the list of the top ones that kind of, like you said, put it into practice. You meet people. I
Yeah.
believe that relationships are the core of life, man. Like that's
Yeah.
not just work; that's everywhere and everything.
Mhm.
The reason why I've had a successful career on Wall Street in New York and Chicago, and with the work I've been doing for the last 7 years, is really all about people. It's all about like networking, and I tell students all the time, if you're shy, get over it. And that's not
Yeah.
going to get you anywhere.
Mhm.
You've heard me say that, and it might sound harsh. When I myself was not a fan of public speaking at all
Yeah.
until I started my organization a couple years ago, and I realized that what, if I stay quiet and if I just stay to the back of the room and I don't speak up and I don't ask questions,
Yeah.
there's nothing's going to come out of that. Nothing good is going to come out of that. So I think that's the lesson that you kind of took to heart, being
Yeah.
connected to me and what we were doing for the last couple of years. And, really powerful message to send to students
Yeah.
at a very young age too. I think the earlier the better students understand that you got to speak up, you got to ask questions, you got to
Hmm.
be curious, right? You got to show
Right.
interest,
Exactly.
and
Right.
sometimes you got to show up in person.
Mm.
In the world of social media and the virtual world we've been living in, students have gotten used to like being on not on camera, turning the camera off and
Exactly.
whatever. But I think when we go to events like these conferences in DC and Chicago and other places, you get to meet industry professionals from across the board, right? Senior level
Exactly.
people,
Right.
CEOs and managing directors and founders and employees all over these companies. That only helps you, man. And I think, the thing with this podcast and what I've been doing with young people is really trying to open up doors for them and introduce them to folks who can expand their network. But I want you guys to become your own network one day, right?
Exactly.
So you could call students who you've met through me and say, "Hey, I see you're doing this now. I'm interested. I like real estate. Can we talk about that?" And you guys,
Mhm.
you don't technically need me anymore, right? And that's the goal, is for me to kind of fade out in the background and have you guys become your own network. But one question I had for you, man, you talked about working full time, going to school full time, summer programs, internships, all that stuff. Where does your motivation come from? Where does that drive come from? To, you mentioned your mom not giving up, just to wake up every single day, because we all know that we
Yeah.
don't wake up with motivation every day, but we should be disciplined. So I
Right.
think I'd love to hear more about what does your motivation come from.
So there are two things. One, my mother and the example she gave me. My mother, she had a lot of perseverance with her role as a single mother and of five children. I never saw her give up. I never really saw her complain. She was a fighter. She was a soldier, and I think that example is what motivated me, and that's the behind my drive. Because I always tell myself, my mother passed away a few years ago to cancer in 2019. So I often, whenever I face myself in any difficult time in my life, or if there's a difficult phase in my life, I tell myself, my mother has faced worst
Mm.
experiences, and yet she persevered. Why can I not? So, and then the other thing is that has to do with my mother's. Before passing away, my mother and I had a discussion. One of them is don't do drugs. That's what she told me. Don't fall into drugs. Stay away from them. The other one is just be great. Just be the greatest at it is whatever you're gonna do. So that's one. The other motivator is, like I mentioned, is it's an internal feeling. And I know it sounds corny, but it's an internal feeling that I feel within me in my gut. I can't explain it, but I feel this internal feeling that sort of just propels me to move forward. And I've tried ignoring it, but I even when I ignore it, I even feel a sense of guilt. And I know that feel a sense of guilt when I'm not moving it forward in the course of my life that I want to take, because I know that when I'm not doing that, I'm not speaking into the truth of who I really am. It is only when I'm actually pursuing those things, no matter how difficult, how challenging they might be, that I feel okay, that I feel at peace with myself. That tells me you're being authentic. You're being who you are as a person. So yeah, those are the two motivators, my mother and just this internal feeling. I call it a passion, or I call it what you were brought on this earth to do.
Yeah, I think your purpose, I mean, I think like, you feel that urge again to do something and to always be trying to better yourself. And again, I believe that we're all products of our environment in some way, shape, or form, good or bad, how we grew up and the people that were around us. For you,
Yeah.
it was your mom, right? You just always saw every single day she did what she had to do, in spite of, right? And that lesson, that trait was now ingrained in you forever, and it'll probably show up in your kids one day or your
Yeah.
grandkids. And I think for me, it was the same thing. People ask me all the time, like, why do I'm always talking about my purpose in life is to help students, right? To help. And they ask me, like, where did that come from? Like, why are you doing that? And I said, my dad, you know, he was an entrepreneur. He never worked for anyone. He was a coach of the soccer club and the coach of everything in the community. Everybody that worked for his business was somebody from our neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I just never he was a civil rights guy in Trinidad. He ran for office. So that's all I saw growing up. My entire life is like him giving back. And as a kid, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to do that, right? You're thinking I'm going to do something else. But I think as you get older and you start going through your own adulthood and life or whatever, and having kids too, like you realize like these are things that I saw and I kind of absorbed, unconsciously absorbed, from my dad or my parents. And for you, it was your mom, and the things that she went through to help you and your siblings. So I totally get that, man. I understand that plays a factor into how we build our network as well too, because
Yeah.
we tend to gravitate towards people who are like-minded, right? So one thing I
Exactly.
talk to students, I've talked to you about is, surround yourself with people who are going to make you better, right?
Right.
Show up in a room where you're not the smartest person. I don't ever want to be in a room where I'm the smartest person. That's I need to find another room. So I
Yeah.
think I like to surround myself with people who, I am inspired by, and that's not just people my age. That's people like your age and even younger. I've met high school kids that inspired me, right, and motivated me to keep going. And I think the theme within your entire story is discipline. Like I said, we don't. There are days that we don't want to get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
There are days that we might be sick, but the discipline, right? That mindset to like say, hey, I have to do this. I'm gonna keep going. And sometimes if you don't do it, it doesn't get done,
Yeah.
right? So if your mom didn't do it, it wasn't gonna get done, right? So
Yeah.
when I started my business, if I didn't get up every day and do what needed to be done, it was not gonna get done. I
Mhm.
think not everybody's cut out for that life. Not everybody has that mindset. I think more people should. But again, you're somebody that I been paying close attention to for a couple of years now as we've gotten to know each other, I've seen the impact you've had on younger students as well. You take a leadership role during the summer with me and teaching as well. But
Yeah.
I've seen the commitment that you've shown, and there's this thing called a leadership shadow that we
Right.
all cast that we don't even know. That
Yeah.
means they're younger people looking up to you, or just people looking up to you, because they're paying attention to you. What they're seeing, what you're doing online, they're seeing all these events you're going to, right? I know you're involved in a lot of student organizations
Right.
and that kind of thing. So maybe let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of the social capital network building things you're doing at school and how you participate and how you show up for those organizations.
So I did a lot of events through Harold Washington, as you know, Vivon. I've done a lot of events with you where I've networked with a lot of professionals. But I'm also right now, because we have to keep this consistency of networking. Yes, it's about putting in hard work, but what should be in that equation of hard work? You're right. It's social capital. It's reaching out to your network, because ultimately, just like Greenwood has had an impact on me, or just like you, Vivon, has had an impact on my life, or Alex Martinez, just like that, you need to continue to connect with people, because that's ultimately going to have a really great impact on your life. So one of the things that I did is I decided to join a club that's mostly geared for Latino business students, or Latinx. So this club is called Alpha. This club stands for Association of Latino Professionals for America. And basically, what we do is I'm a board member for that club, and I'm the director of corporate relations. So for those of you who don't know what director of corporate relations is basically I'm the one that does reaching out to the companies, recruiters, employees. I engage in this conversation. I initiate the conversation, and I get them interested in coming in and doing an event with us. And then eventually I start to organize the event myself. So
Mm.
throughout that time, we're communicating back and forth with these recruiters and these firms, these corporate partners of ours. I'm developing this relationship with them. They're getting to know me. They're getting to know my story. They're getting to know about what I do and the reason why I do it, which the reason I started doing it is because just like me, at one point I needed a lot of people to guide me. And Vivon has guided me, or Alex Martinez, or other mentors that I've had throughout my life. Just like me, others need that guidance. I know that they're looking for that sort of guidance into what to do with their careers. So one of the reasons I started doing Alpha was because I wanted to help other young people. I saw that they also needed some advice, including a big part of it, networking, meeting the right people. Just today and yesterday, I'm already getting emails and messages about, do I have any contacts to in a specific firm? Do I know anyone at the specific firm? I want to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person, learn about any career opportunities, and maybe, Manny, you can make that connections between you and that recruiter, and then get me into the conversation. So that was another reason I did it. And I also did it to sort of engage myself with these a lot of the corporate partners, learn about what they're doing, show that I'm active outside of just merely school, show that I'm active and wanting to learn more about firms, more about what they're doing and the roles that exist, and also really engage in understanding the company culture, because from there I can decide this is the firm I want to work for. I like this person. They were really cool to work with. It would probably be really interesting to work at this person in the firm if they have probably a lot of people just like that, or to work along with this person. So yeah, so that's a club that I've been involved in, and through this club, we've done a lot of events. We did an event with Bank of America. We did an event with KPMG. As of right now, we're talking to a few investment banking firms, where our students are going to be visiting these firms, and they're going to be touring. They're going to look at the investment banking department. They're going to look at the trading floor, and they get to learn a lot about these firms, including myself. And through that, they get to leverage off the social capital, make networks, and hopefully that's going to have an impact on their career. Hopefully, they're able to make mentors, they're able to make friends, and then leverage from those networks.
I think you hit on something really key because a lot of students don't join groups at school, right,
Yeah.
and clubs, but they're missing a big thing, and that's what you just hit on. Is like it's an opportunity for you to grow your network because if you become the face of like the role that you have right now,
Mhm.
corporate relations and meeting firms, you're the first person those people at that company will interact with.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're gonna remember you once you have a good experience and things work out. You do events. You're
Yeah.
the guy. They're gonna come to. Hey, Manny. I'm from Bank of America. We'd like to do a bigger event. We want to come on campus. We want to do things in New York. You're the guy that you're going to contact, right? And you're going to graduate from DePaul. And guess what? They'll still be in touch with you. So I think a lot of students overlook the fact that when you talk about social capital and growing your network, you can't start early enough. And it's also important, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but how do you maintain and nurture those relationships? Because you can you can be a social butterfly. You could go meet everybody at an event, and everybody gives you their business card or say, "Hit me up on LinkedIn," and then you never reach out again. They forget about you, right? So
Exactly.
I think that's an important thing for students to understand, that join groups and join organizations on campus, because you get to be sometimes the face of the organization. And I can tell you from the corporate side of things, if I was when I was working in finance in New York and Chicago, I interacted with students all the time in organizations, and my point of contact would be that person that you know what I mean, that student. I'm like, hey, I'm no longer at this company, but I'm over here now, and we want to do something with you guys. By the way, do you know anybody looking for an internship or a job? Because again, when you think about a network or you think about social capital, it literally is the core of the people that can help you, not just today, but it might be 5, 10 years down the road. I've spent 20 years on Wall Street, and I can tell you, like, starting my organization 7 years ago, what the first thing I did was went to my friends who I worked with at the New York Stock Exchange and other companies, right? Morgan Stanley. I went to them first and say, hey, so and so, I want to come to New York and I want to bring, 20, 30 college kids with me. Can we come to the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange? Yeah, no problem. Let's make that happen. Right? Those were my relationships. That's why I keep harping on the fact that I think relationships are the core of every single thing we do, because those individuals 10, 15 years later was able to help me with a simple phone call because we had a great relationship. So I think great tip for students is join organizations, try to become the face of them when it comes to dealing with the corporate side of things, because when it's time to graduate or looking for that job or internship, you can call now 15, 20 companies. Say, hey, here's my resume. We've been working together for the last couple of semesters. What do you have for me? So I think that's a great point that you made. So that's a good segue into you're on campus, you're doing all this stuff with these organizations, and we talked about meeting people. How do you maintain those relationships over time with these individuals that you're meeting?
So after I initiate that conversation, we connect, we sort of collaborate, we get what we want from each other. But you don't want the relationship to merely be of interest or, hey, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. That's okay. That's an okay thing to do. But you want to have it sort of intertwine with this authentic, legitimate friendship. And so now you're going from having this relationship to just barely being business to being business and friendship. And you intertwine both things, and that's the best connection you can have because that's how you build trust. And when people trust you, they want to work with you. And I think that's what you build when you were at the Wall Street, you were able to call your friends, Favan. So how do you maintain that relationship? And how do you turn it into more of a friendship or someone they know of, to maintain someone on their radar? One way that I do it is during holidays, I reach out to people and I say, hey, happy holidays. Or that's one way to do it. And a lot of people might not respond right away because they're extremely busy, or it might take them a few days, and that's okay. But at least it shows that you're still engaged in trying to pursue whatever it is that you're trying to pursue. You're showing authentic, you're really showing consideration for this other person, and you're in that person's mind. So now, when there's ever an opportunity that comes, who do you think they're going to think about first? They're going to think about that person who reached out to, oh, that's right. This person keeps reaching out to me. I'm going to actually there's an internship opportunity, there's a full-time opportunity. I'm going to call them. I know they have a great background. They're always engaged. They're always reaching out to people. And not only does that speak well of them trying to reach out to me, but that speaks well in far as the business segment because networking, social capital is extremely crucial in business. It's a people business. Even though it has a lot to do with numbers, it's also a people business. And that's what I've been told my whole life. So that's one way I maintain it. The second way I maintain it is I reach out and say, hey, how's it going? I haven't heard from you in a long time. How have you been? Is everything okay? What new things are you working on? What are some cool projects? This is what I'm working on. Those are two ways. And you will see how that slowly will intertwine into just merely being business relationship into slowly being intertwined into a more personable, more personal, more friendly relationship in between. And from there, you really get to know each other on a deep level. And pretty soon you find yourself, hey, we're not only working on this project, we're working on multiple projects together, just like you did when you reached out to people on Wall Street.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. I think for entrepreneurs and people who want to start businesses, they think they got to go have all this money to start. And I tell them like, no, relationship capital is what you need. You need social capital because when I was starting, Greenwood, I didn't have a board of directors, I didn't have money, I didn't have students, I didn't have partners. All I had was an idea. But what I had a lot of was social capital. I'd met so many people, and when I had
Yeah.
the idea to start this organization, I went to the people who I knew were in philanthropy or like foundation or whatever, and I said, "Here's an idea that I have," and they said, "Oh, that makes sense." And to your point, when it comes to relationships, credibility, trust, and track record, and if they like you, people do business with people that they like, that they
Exactly.
trust, who have a track record and have credibility. That's who people do business with. That's what it comes down to. You can talk about the numbers all day long or whatever, your resume. Trust me, it's all about relationships. So when I had this idea to start a business, that's all I had. So people weren't investing in Greenwood, they were investing in Bavon.
Exactly.
Like that's what they were investing in because I
Yeah.
Greenwood didn't exist. They just were investing in me and me coming to them, and you know how it is when I talk about what I'm passionate about, it comes through. And when you talk about yourself, it should come through. When you give your elevator pitch, like you're selling yourself, right?
Exactly.
Whoever's hearing that has to believe it, and it's
Right.
coming from you. Like nobody knows you better than you. That's why I tell students all the time, be proud to like talk about yourself because nobody knows you better than you. And when it comes
Mhm.
to relationships, again, maintaining those relationships, we could have a whole podcast on just LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn
Right.
is gold, and
Exactly.
it's really sad that most students don't use LinkedIn or realize the value of LinkedIn. I work with high school kids and I have them set up a LinkedIn profile. I mean, in high school, and when they meet corporate folks, they're like, "Wait, you're a junior in high school and you have a LinkedIn profile?" They're
That's a lot about them.
way ahead of the game, right? So I
Yeah.
think to your point of maintaining and nurturing relationships, super important because a lot of people meet people you meet people every day, but when you meet someone that you want to connect with or you feel like, hey, I can add value to their what they're doing and they can add value to mine, it becomes a relationship, becomes a friendship. So me
Hmm.
now in this kind of second stage of my career, whatever I'm doing next, is really on this podcast is all about helping people connect with other people. All my guests will be people that I have a relationship with, have friends with, mentored or whatever, past students like yourself, current mentees, and business people from the
Yeah.
private equity space to athletes to wherever. Like I'm trying to find ways to connect people because I've seen the impact that had on me and what I was able to do. And the last 7 years of what I've been doing in the nonprofit space, I look back now and I realize, wow, I met a ton of people. I met
Yeah.
I met so many people, and if I took inventory of who they are, literally I can call up anybody now and say, "This is what I'm doing now. Let's go," and they're on board. So, but again, that comes with trust,
Right.
credibility, a track record, and again, it might sound a little harsh, but people do business with people that they like, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you and I don't want to spend all day, around people we don't like, right? Or people who don't like us. People we want to be our best selves. We want to bring ourselves to work. We want to do things that fulfill us and we're passionate about and we feel is our purpose. So I think building the right type of social capital and surrounding yourself with the right people also
Mhm.
brings the best out of you as well. So on that point, I want to talk about your journey when you get to like Harold Washington. Like, I know you were pursuing finance. I know you mentioned like you were struggling because you didn't have the right resources, the connection, the mentors, maybe counseling. So talk about you kind of like at Harold Washington trying to figure it out on your own. There's a lot of stuff you didn't know.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
I was at Harold Washington Community College, and all I knew is that I wanted to break into finance, but I had no idea how to do it. And I really didn't have a clear understanding of what finance was. I had my own preconceived notions. So I didn't know what was the path. I didn't know about the different avenues to take. I didn't know what skills that I needed to be in this field. I just knew that somehow it's related to the stock market, it's related to finance, and it's a topic that I would often read when I was taking my GED book because I would read a lot on the economics section. That was my favorite section. I
Mm,
wanted to become an expert at it. So I don't know much about the field. So as a person who I didn't know that I was doing, I have my own preconceived notions on what finance has to do with or what's related to. So the first thing I decided to do is I decided to take an H&R Block course. Okay, while I was at Harold Washington. So one day I'm driving down and I see this H&R Block office where they prepare your taxes, your personal tax preparations, and then I see that in this window they have this sign, and the sign says tax courses, $99. I'm like, oh, that's something I want to learn. that has something to do with finance. I know it's not exactly fine. I know it might have something to do with it. So I decided to enroll for the course. I take the course. I drag even my girlfriend along. I say, "You're also going to take this course because I know it's going to do some good in the future, and I know it's going to help my career, and it's going to expose me. It's going to expose me to so much." I take this course. I learn a lot. I learn about tax credits, tax deductions, when someone's entitled to it, when they're legally entitled to it, all the tax regulations, how often they change, the tax code. So I learn all these things, and then I start again using my social capital. I go into visit into these offices. They say they're hiring. I start reaching out to some of the recruiters. They start having an event for people who want to work. You didn't have to work for H&R Block. You can take the course and just merely learn the subject. But I wanted to work for H&R Block. So I go into these offices. I'm networking, and eventually I get hired as a tax preparer, and I do it for 2 years. So, and for me, this was a way to expose myself into tax preparation. So, but the thing is that this training, it's sort of in my way into trying to make find myself into finance career. It felt like a maze. You can only see a few steps ahead of you, but you don't know if that's really going to lead to your goal. And that's ultimately like that was one of the biggest challenges in my way trying to get through school, trying to get myself into finance, which is I knew I wanted to get into finance. I didn't know what route I'm supposed to take. And that's when I decided to go up on LinkedIn. I'm looking up and I knew I needed mentoring. I knew I needed to be part of some program, like some sort of boot camp that exposed me to finance, someone that mentored me really well. And I'm looking up all these programs on LinkedIn. I had a profile, and then I start running into students who have LinkedIn profiles with Greenwood Project on them. And I start looking up what is it like, hey, this person they all have great internships. William Blair, finance, investment banking, investment management, all these great careers. I was like, that's what I'm trying to do. I run into Alex Martinez. I reach out to him. We have a dialogue back and forth. I learn about him, once again, using my social capital, my networking skills. And then he gives me so much information. I look on their website. I'm impressed by the whole thing. I know they visited the stock exchange. I'm like, wow, this is something I really want to do. They went to New York. I'm like, I definitely need to be part of this. This is going to be a game changer for me. I connect with Alex. He gives me a lot of insight. And then Alex sends my resume to the founder. And that founder, it was you, Vivon. And he sends my resume. And then one day I get a call from you. And I remember that call. And I know because I was working and at the time I was in Wisconsin. You call me during my break. I'm taking my break. We have a conversation about the program. I fill out the application. I get accepted into the program. And all of a sudden, things begin to take off. So something that was taking me years to pursue is not all of a sudden changing, and they're really taking off. I'm being exposed to different aspects of finance, different avenues, different careers, corporate evaluation, all sorts of evaluation, financial statements, stock competitions, certifications, and I'm just learning so much. Steep learning curve, learn a lot, extremely challenging, very rigorous, and I'm exposed to all these connections within the finance, and things really begin to take off. So that was a time where I didn't know what I was doing, and then all of a sudden, just I found the right person, and it just opened a whole new world, and it's exactly the recipe or the ingredient that I needed to really help me take things off.
Yeah. And I think I mean again we talked about earlier about when we first met and the thing that struck me again, I treat everyone when I meet them for the first time as, brand new, like first time meeting, clean slate. We've all had things that we've been through, struggles and stuff in the past, but when we had that conversation, I knew right away. I was like, he wants it. He wants it really bad. He's hungry. He's ready to go. And I saw you put the work in every single summer, every single year. You're still doing it today. We're still connected. We talk all the time. Question for you is, given we've talked about your growing up here in Chicago, your mom, the perseverance, high school, GED, all that stuff, Harold Washington. Take us to summer 2022. What were you doing summer 2022, and what was that experience like? And
Yeah.
we, in preparation for this episode, we talked a little bit about some of the things you were doing on the weekend too. But tell the audience about your summer last summer and what that was like.
So I'm building a great rapport with you, Vivani, and then all of a sudden I'm connecting with people who worked at Piper Sandler, and I'm able to get a public finance investment banking summer analyst internship in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I get to go there. I stay there. I do this internship. I'm learning about the culture. I'm being exposed to what the finance role actually is. I'm applying the theory I've learned in my classes. I'm learning new skill sets from a practical sense. I'm seeing the bond market from a trading perspective, and I'm seeing how they underwrite some of the bonds, some of their clients, some of the coverage, some of the industries to cover, from senior living homes to charter schools, all the way to hospitals, not for profit hospitals. I'm networking and I network with managing directors. I've networked with analysts, associates, vice presidents. I get to sit on a committee where they decide whether they're going to approve the bond or not. And I even get to have lunch with the president of Piper Sound, which is extremely huge. And I felt extremely privileged. Here I am. I'm this person who struggled through school, struggled to get my GED, as you mentioned, Vivon, struggled to get through college. And then I meet the right people, and all of a sudden, things are just changing for me. And it starts changing the person that I am. I'm a new person with new ideas, new concepts, new exposure, and and it starts having a huge impact on my development as a person and the way I'm perceiving the world.
Mm.
So I go into the office, and in this internship, not only did I network with them, not only did I network with some of the managing directors, some of the analysts, some of the associates, I start networking with people in the fixed income department in the trading floor. I start networking with people in investment banking. I probably have a spreadsheet. I probably reached out to about 20 people, Vivon. 20 people. Most of them, I would say, got back to me, and I networked and had a lunch chat. I learned about their industry. I learned about what they're doing. I made a connection with them. They flew in. They had an analyst training, first year analyst training, that were flown in into Minneapolis because Minneapolis is where Piper Sounders headquartered, right? So all these analysts were flew in for first year analysts, flew in to take on a training, and I was able to be part of this full time analyst training.
Mm.
So I learned about all the tax implications, all the codes, the bond, the different types of bonds, the capital structure. I got to use the financial modeling tools that they use. And I got to see the whole underwriting process to acquiring clients, to seeing a meeting with the client. And it was just so impactful. It was extremely impactful for me. Every day I was learning something new. And it was all because of the connections and networks that I was making. The doors were finally opening up. This door that I've been pushing for such a long time to get into finance was finally beginning to just break down, and I was able to finally get to where I was trying to get.
Yeah, yeah.
And I learned a lot. And in addition to that, I'm doing these things, and I'm also, I'm learning so much, Vivon, and I'm also, in addition to that, I have a home that I have purchased for my mother. And after she passed away, I'm looking like, what am I going to do with this house? And I look into renting. So I'm driving back and forth from Minneapolis to Chicago to get a repair, to look for some tenants, and then to get the place rented out. And then I drive back, and I'm doing that throughout the whole, I would say, throughout for a month. I was doing that back and forth every weekend. And then on Monday again, I was there on time, ready to do the work, learning a lot. So it was just an impactful experience last summer. And it's something that I'm never going to forget.
Wait, so round trip, what was how far were you driving every weekend?
It was in total 12 hours from
Wow.
Minneapolis to Chicago, about 6 hours. From Chicago back to Minneapolis, 6 hours. I would come in on a Friday. I would come start driving over here on a very Friday night, around midnight. I would get here maybe at 2 a.m., sleep. The next day I would wake up, go fix my property because I needed a few repairs, look for people who wanted to rent it, interview them, have them fill out the applications. And I would forget about 5 people who were interested in looking at my place and then seeing if they wanted, they've qualified to rent it out. And then I would drive back, and I would keep doing that every weekend for about a month throughout the whole for that summer. So it was intense, but I think it built a lot of character,
Mm.
and that's what's brought me a lot of confidence in myself. I know who I am, and I know that I have a lot to offer. And so as we're building the social capital, I know you can offer me a lot, but I can offer you a lot in return.
No, I appreciate that, Manny. And I think for me, the reward for me and the I don't know salary for me for doing what I do is really seeing you, right? So when I met you on day one all those years ago, you the things you're talking about now with the bond market and fixed income and going to Minneapolis and those things will down the road, but I know you could get there one day. I think for you it was always also brand new, but the thing that you had was that drive and determination to get there, and you were willing to do whatever it took, right? And I think you know you doing this internship in Minneapolis and driving back 12 hours round trip to take care of your property. So first of all, kudos to you for being a property owner, a landlord,
Thank you.
so you're doing that as well too. But I think, man, the theme within your entire story, growing up to Hal Washington to meeting me and doing what you're doing now is just perseverance, not giving up, which is, I think, amazing. And when it comes to social capital, you've met a ton of people and you've done a good job of getting those relationships as well too. As we kind of wrap up here, a question for you: the stage that you're at right now and what you're doing, how does your journey, your story, all the people you've met, your education, how has that now changed every generation after you to come? Like, for example, what is the ripple effect of Manny being Manny today?
It has a huge ripple effect. What I'm experiencing, it's having a deep impact, not only on the next generation, it's having an impact on my siblings. So let me start with my sister. My sister owns a business. She took over the food truck business and it's becoming extremely successful.
Hmm.
So, as people who are both interested in business and in finance and in investments, we every week we call each other and we exchange ideas. We exchange ideas, and she often tells me about what she's learned, the new things she's looked at, the new properties she's looked at, and I also share my knowledge with her. And I say, hey, there are multiple ways for you to get funding for your business. You can get a loan, we can do this through a venture capital firm, and it's all because of what I've been learning through my connections. And the same thing, she said, hey, I learned about this, about maybe getting a commercial property. I learned this about maybe renting out a place that I want to turn into a hall, or a residential place that I want to rent out to tenants. These are the sort of things that we've been learning. Not only that, but the things that I've been learning that have to do with valuation, how to do researching, how to do analysis on the stock. That's had a big impact. Learning about portfolios and how to manage a portfolio. That's having a huge impact because now I'm passing on this information to my sister, and that's having an impact on her in the way she manages her finances.
Hmm.
It's huge. It's only going to keep growing, and it's going to leave a lasting impact on my family, on my whole family, my siblings, and it's going to change the generations from all the way from my mother immigrating from Mexico, very poor, living in Blue Island, very poor in a small trailer, all the way to working at McDonald's, all the way to working as a car wash employee, to raising five children on her own, starting her business, and then now all us doing this. And also, what's happening is that this is having a ripple effect, and it's having an impact on the next generation, which are my nephews and my nieces. So let me tell you how it's having an impact. My nephew, 13 years old. My other nephew, he's 7 years old. Okay. The 7 year old is always talking about how he wants to open a pizza shop. Okay. I tell him about the stocks. We tell him about managing finance. We tell him about credit. We tell him about what's the portfolio, and it's having an impact on him and the way he's going to go about making decisions. He's looking at me. He's seen me go to college. He's seen that some of my siblings went to college. All that is leaving a lasting impact. It's so impactful that my 13-year-old nephew, he's talking about applying to
Hmm.
Harvard University.
Wow.
That's a huge impact from my mother being a single mother to me going through my struggles, and now having my nephew talk at 13 talking about Harvard University. I tell him about the trading floor. I show him pictures. I say, hey, this is what I went to.
Hmm.
You can be part of this if you want. He's talking about being a lawyer. He's talking about at a very young age, at around 8, 9 years old, he was talking about buying a home. Mom, he told my sister, Mom, can I save money? Can I use that money to buy a home? And then one day I can rent out the property and buy another home. This is what the impact and the ripple effect that it's having on my family and on the generations. He also started a lemonade stand, and he's very good at saving, very good, and it's leaving a huge impact on family, and it's something I'm extremely proud of because you realize this is not only for me, this is for my family, for my partner, for the next generation, for my children. I'm going to be able to guide them through it, and I'm going to give them the right sort of the mindset and the right education and resources for them to be able to accomplish this. And at one point, they won't have to deal with so many setbacks and so many odds against them as I did. So it's having a huge impact.
Yeah, I think, Manny, can I hear you talk about your family and the impact and the ripple effect? I mean, I think you're the catalyst for generational wealth building in your family. It's starting with you. And we talk about struggles and things that we had to deal with. And I believe that sometimes our struggles are a superpower, man, because it builds character. And I think when you struggle and you fall and you get back up, a lot of people fall, they never get back up, right? But I think when you have the courage, the strength, and the discipline to get back up, and to just try and keep trying until you get there, I mean, that pays dividends, man. And I think you're in a prime example of that. I think I know your story, and I learned a lot through this conversation as well too, and us getting ready for this conversation that I didn't know. But I wasn't surprised because I know you and I know the kind of person you are, and your
Yeah,
nieces and your nephews. I mean, you are gonna. I mean, we want them to like exceed all expectations that you had for
excellent.
yourself. So, we all want better for our kids and our nieces and our nephews and our family. And I think again, I look at you as being the catalyst for generational change in your family, and I think that's something that you should be super proud of. I'm very proud to even know you and be connected to you. You inspire and motivate me, like I said. And at the end of every episode, I want to have our guests leave the audience with one solid tip, piece of advice. It could be anything. Again, social capital is the theme. We've talked about how throughout your entire journey, your networks and you meeting people have led to new, bigger, and better things. But what's one thing that you have that you can share, or you want to share with the audience?
The one thing that I have is it's sort of two things that are connected to each other. That's the one thing. And the one thing is really understand your self worth. Have a really high self worth. There are people who are going to tell you, they're going to tell you what your self worth is,
Mm,
but you don't have to believe them. But you're going to have to really have a good sense of self worth of yourself. And when you do that, that's when you're going to find the courage and the confidence to reach out to people, because there's always, even if you don't feel as confident and secure about yourself every day, you're that sense of self-worth is going to be ingrained in your self-conscious, and something's going to propel you to reach out to a person. And then that's the next thing that I want to leave out is, don't be afraid to reach out to a person. The worst thing you can get is a no. No, I do not want to help you. No, I do not want to set up a meeting to explain things about to you about this business. No, I do not want to tell you about this interview process. That's the worst thing you can get. But if you reach out and you reach out enough to people, eventually someone's going to take notice of your self-worth. But it has to start with you. It has to start with you as a person. Find your self-worth, then utilize that self-worth. Say, hey, I have a lot to offer to the world. I have a lot to offer to anyone I connect with. But I also think that others have something to offer me. And as a result, I'm going to reach out to someone on LinkedIn or any sort of any form of means of communicating with someone. I don't know, cold call an office, say, hey, I don't mean to bother you, but can I connect with them and tell them, hey, I either want to find out about an opportunity, I want to learn something, or maybe you can refer me to a person who knows about this, or the right person who knows about the information you're looking for, and that's going to open up a huge world for you. But don't be afraid, don't hold back, do it constantly, get over the rejection, and just keep pushing forward, and eventually you're going to find a person who will say yes to you, just like I found Alex Martinez, just like I found Vivan Joseph, just like I found other people in my life at Piper Sandler. You're gonna eventually find that person,
yeah,
and that's all you need to get to where you want to get.
yeah. I think that's gold, man. That piece of advice is amazing, very valuable. So yeah, man, Manny, I just want to say thanks, man, for making time to do this. Again, you came to mind right away as I started thinking about my first guest on this first season of the Social Capital Guy podcast. It's all about social capital. Again, relationships are the key to everything, I believe, man. And I'll give you one opportunity here now to ask me anything. So you get to ask me a question now as we kind of end this call.
Vivan, one thing that I never mentioned is, how your organization has inspired me, and how when you invited me to an event in DC and I saw you speak on stage, you were a motivation for me. You inspired me. And you might not know that, and often I might not say it because I wait for that special moment that's going to be super impactful. But that moment when I saw you, Vivan, who's helped me out so much, speak on stage where you were talking about what the Greenwood has done for different students. That inspired me to do more. I said, you know what? There's a lot of good people out here who are going to look out, who are going to help me out. And that inspired me. My next goal is to start a nonprofit, to do with food trucks, something that's also been inspired by my mother. And I would like to start a food truck, not for profit, that helps feed the homeless in every major city in America. I'm seeing major homelessness. And I said, hey, and this is the catch. I'm going to say Mama's Food Truck. That's what it's going to be called because it's going to be based on my mother's recipe. And so, knowing that's something I also aspire to, what is some advice for me to ensure that the food truck takes off?
Well, first of all, amazing idea, I think, and concept. The thing with starting a business that I've learned is your why. Like, why are you doing this? I had what you have right now, just an idea. Like, you want to do it. I just heard you talk about it. I could tell you're passionate about it. It's coming from a place very personal to you, your mom and her story. And so I think you have your why. And I think that's going to drive you to the end result, which is to make this a reality. The thing that's really helped me raise money for what I did the last 7 years, build relationships, get corporate partners, expand to other places, grow the number of kids we reached. I mean, we did a lot in a short space of time. And again, I keep going back to this concept of relationships. It's like relationships and you showing up and saying what you just said. So I've been in pitch competitions, I've spoken everywhere. When I talk about the thing that I'm passionate about and I'm purposeful about and I feel is my purpose, people have no choice but to come along. So you gotta give people no choice but to come along. When they meet you, they gotta say, "Wow, Manny is crazy obsessed about this thing." I think, and just all right, well, if I mean, he's convinced me. He's so passionate about it that I feel I have no choice but to believe in him. And that's why I tell entrepreneurs all the time people are going to invest in you before they invest in your business. But sometimes you don't have anything, not even a proof of concept. All you have is you showing up in a room and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. So you just said this to me, and my wheels are already turning about how I can help you. And that's the power of speaking up. That's the power of networking. That's the power of social capital and not being afraid to talk to people.
Yeah,
Again, I keep saying this if you're shy, get over it. It's not going to get you anywhere. So,
yeah,
my piece of advice for you is just show up and talk about it because that's what I did for like 7, 8 years. I never stopped talking about it. I was always top of mind for people. LinkedIn, social media, I was talking about it. So people realize you are the business, you are the brand. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs start businesses for the wrong reasons. They want to, it's not a wrong reason, but sometimes people just want to make money. And I think with me, I've realized that if you're solving a problem that you have a lived experience about, I think the best entrepreneurs are the ones who start a business out of a lived experience. That was my experience being on trading floors and not seeing anybody who looked like me and try to do something about it. Your experience is your mom starting a food truck business, amazing recipe. You know people like it. What happens if that food truck is in every city in the United States, feeding the homeless? So I think that's my piece of advice to you is don't stop talking about it. Don't forget what your why is. You're not doing it for money. You're doing this to help people. I think when we set out to help people first, everything else falls into line. I didn't start a nonprofit to make money. Nobody does. Nobody does starts a nonprofit to get rich. You know what I'm saying? But I got what I call social capital rich in the process. So I met so many people. And when I look at the value of that network, it is priceless. You can't even put a number on it. Remember what your why is and tell everybody and keep at it. Be passionate about it. And then when it's time to execute, you already know what to do. I mean, you could rely on me. You could call on people in your network.
right.
And don't worry about the dollars, man. The dollars are going to come. People believe and invest in you first. So that's my piece of advice. And Manny, I just want to say again, appreciate you opening up and talking about some of the things that you've struggled in the past, how you got over that. And the theme for me throughout your story is just resilience, not giving up, falling down, and just keep getting back up. And I just want to say, when I met you all those years ago, and you said, I want to be in finance, you're well on your way to being in finance and exceeding all those expectations for yourself. And I didn't put any expectations on you. I knew you were just going to blow it out of the water. So I just want to say thanks, man. Much gratitude to you for trusting me to be your mentor and to help guide you on your career path. And it just means a lot to me to be connected to you pretty much forever.
Absolutely. Likewise, I'm so honored and I feel so privileged that I had the opportunity to meet you. And I know this is a lasting relationship that's going to stick on for years because I know it's not only it's based on genuine, sure, it's based on same interest, but I think it's also really based on a genuine mentor, mentee, and also friendship. And I'm so honored that I met you, Vivant. Be an honor that you had me here today as your first guest, tell my story, and also talk about the social impact and the way I've been able to build up my social capital through you. I'm so grateful for that. And I thank you.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There were some really good takeaways from this episode, I thought. Manny, throughout his journey, encountered many challenges, but the one constant was the fact that he never gave up. He set his goals and he took all the little steps needed to achieve those goals. Manny has now become a leader in his own right and definitely a role model to his nieces and nephews, and to all the students who are going to hear this podcast who will be inspired and motivated by him. We also talked about the fact that not every day we'll be motivated, but we should be disciplined as we pursue our goals and dreams. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and please visit our website at thesocialcapitalguy.com to subscribe and to learn about new episodes. And also follow us on all social media platforms at The Social Capital Guy. I am your host, Bhavan Joseph. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your network is your net worth. TikTok.